Hello everyone, my name is Eric Jones. We're going to look at tools of landscape and irrigation design. It's a PowerPoint that I've put together to kind of show you just some basic tools that you would need to hand draw either a landscape plan or an irrigation plan. It's also a lecture that I introduced my beginning landscape architecture students. And you may ask why I'm not teaching CAD or a pro landscape in the beginning semester or through a lecture like this, is because I truly believe that you must be able to draw by hand prior to sitting down at a CAD station or with a software program such as Pro Landscape. That's the way I learned it. I learned how to draw by hand prior to using AutoCAD, and so that's the way I teach my students. CAD is the way to go, but guys, every now and then I like to just sit down at a drafting table and jot down some ideas, do a quick landscape design or a quick as-built irrigation plan. I mean, there's times I just get tired of sitting in front of a computer, and I like to put on my my creative thinking hat, and I like to sit down and to draw by hand. And so what I'm going to do with this lecture, I've got good pictures of the material on the slides, but I'm also going to hold up some of the materials that I have here available with me, so you'll see me disappear and reappear back into the video. Don't think that I've left you. I'm actually still talking, and I see some stuff over there that I need to get right now. So let's go ahead and get started with tools of landscape and irrigation design. So the objectives of this lecture: we're going to learn the drafting tools and materials used to draw plan drawings. We're also going to understand the basic tools required for the beginning design student, and we're going to learn tips and techniques for using the drafting tools. Now, some of you may have already taken drawing the irrigation plan, and I do plan on redoing that lecture here in the next few days. Just with updated plans and kind of revisiting that lecture. So if you've taken that, that's great. If not, and you plan on taking it, I will actually be changing that up a little bit. Thinking of anything else with our objectives. We also have a lecture online entitled Reading a Landscape and Irrigation Plan. That's basically teaching you how to use these guys. It's crazy, but my students in class, I actually have to revisit the scales, especially first year students in each class, because they do tend to forget. But once you learn how to read one of these scales, it's an invaluable tool to have. I use it every day. I've actually worn some out. I got these just a couple months ago because I actually have rubbed the ink off of the scales. So I go through quite a few. They come in multiple sizes. As you can see here, it has some smaller scales. They can fit in your shirt pocket, which is good if you have if you're out in the field. You don't necessarily have to carry around a big one like that. I've actually seen ones the size of a pencil, and if you got good eyesight, you should be able to read those. But anyway, well, let's get started with the lecture. So to begin with, you're going to need a drawing surface. At school, we use something similar to this. Our mats are green. They have a matte green finish, but the criteria for your drawing surface, it has to be a smooth surface. It has to have a straight edge, 90-degree corners. And the drafting table, again, doubled myself up here, but a smooth surface and adjustable height and angle. I like working with an angle up sometimes. Our tables at school don't necessarily raise up and down, but our chairs do, based on the height of the student. But we can raise that table up and get it up close to you, and you can draw good with it. Now, what do you do if you don't have one of these tables? And when I tell my students, because they spend multiple hours drawing outside the classroom, is I tell them to get a piece of OSB board. Well, maybe not OSB, but maybe some a nice smooth sheet of plywood, and you can buy the mat that goes over it. Buy the board, cut it in half. Doesn't necessarily have to be big. Most of the drawings we work on are either the size of the sheets of paper are 18 by 24 and 24 by 36. So as long as the paper fits on the table, you should be good. And what they do is they'll set that board up onto like their kitchen table. They may have a round kitchen table, but they've got the sheet of plywood that they've cut in half, and they've went and bought the mat. So very inexpensive. They've got a nice drafting table, and it's you've got to have it. It's hard to sit down and do this type of work at the kitchen table. You've got to have those right angles. They also actually sell portable drafting tables that you could get at one of the reprographic stores that may have it. Some of your office supply stores may also have those portable drafting boards that's got the little legs that fold out, and you can actually sit down at your kitchen table with it and use it. And they come in smaller sizes, 24 by 36. I've seen even a smaller one that you can actually keep like in your truck, pull it out, set it up on the hood if you got to make some changes or lay your plans on it. So a real valuable tool that's good to have, and one that you've got to have if you're going to be doing design for either irrigation or landscape work. Paper. We're going to start off with tracing paper or trash paper. You may also hear it called bum wob, or there's several little nicknames for it. I've always called it trash paper or onion paper. My favorite is to call it trash. As you can see here, we got a picture. I'm going to get a roll. It comes in multiple sizes. This is my favorite size here. This is how I actually help the students with their design. It comes in white. It comes like in a canary yellow. It comes in a lighter tan color. It comes in various sizes. Here we have 18-inch height, or a little shorter than that. But we got this size. We come in 24 by 36, and basically it is transparent. You can actually see through it, so you can lay this over top of your drawings and actually take notes. You can do sketches, all kinds of things. I tell my students that this is probably their most important tool in their toolkit. That and a Sharpie, or I use Pentel sign pens. Go through these things like candy, and this is what we problem solve with. Clients are actually hiring us to solve a problem. When we're putting in an irrigation system, we're solving the problem of a non-irrigated lawn or dry areas in their garden. They're hiring us to problem solve. We, as designers, we solve with this tool right here first. When we go to the drafting table or the drafting board, this is our number one tool. This is how we get started. It's a low quality paper that again can be white, yellow, or buff. It comes in the various roll sizes of 12, 36-inch width, and that's when we're talking this height. It's used for sketching ideas and usually used as an overlay. And I'm trying to see if I've got some papers close by on my tables. But also with what we do with the larger rolls, so if we're drawing on a 24 by 36 sheet of paper, or vellum that we'll see here in a sample in the next few slides, we can take this tracing paper and we'll do overlays over it. So we may do site inventory and analysis with our trash paper. We may quickly draw some irrigation heads and different lateral lines and main lines that we want to have on the trash paper to get ideas prior to transferring it to the original master plan, as we would call it. Vellum is a high quality translucent paper. You can buy it at the at the office supply stores. That you can buy it in packs. of 24 by 36 sheets. You can buy it in smaller sheets of 18 by 24. So different various sizes of the vellum. You can actually buy it pre-bordered, having the border around it and actually having the title block in the lower right hand corner for you. Or I'm sure there's some other ways you could get it all the way across the bottom, but a lot of pre-printed vellum sheets are readily available at the office supply stores. I'm not a big fan of the pre-bordered and pre-title block paper. I like drawing my own. I get a little creative and a little artsy with it, and can customize it when I draw it by hand. And I actually draw my borders again simply with a Sharpie or a Pentel sign pen. 1/4 inch from the edge of the paper is my border all the way around, and I will either do my title block on the right hand side or at the very bottom, depending on what size paper I'm using and which type of landscape or irrigation plan that I'm drawing. With vellum, pencil is what you want to use, especially if you make mistakes. I prefer the pen. I don't usually make too many mistakes when it comes to drawing. If I do, I've already made myself so mad that I've ripped the paper in two and started all over. But that happens far few in between. If you do make mistakes, you can, and that's with pen. And I will get got my little handy dandy design box here. Let's get a little bit of whiteout, a little whiteout tape. You can put that on the vellum, because you're going to take that and get it actually photocopied. You're not going to run it through a blueprint machine. They're going to scan it in, copy it, and give you a photocopy of your drawing, and this won't show up. So if you do make a mistake or whatever and you like using pen, you can use the whiteout. My students do that all the time. I do have students that prefer to use pencil all the way through. That is totally up to you guys. It's a comfort zone. And that's how I started out. I started out with pencil, all the time. Pencil on vellum is a way to go. It's very inexpensive to use. But prior to putting your design on your vellum, we always go back to this. Remember, you draw the entire project on trash paper to begin with, and then you can trace it to your vellum. Well, if you do love using pen and you don't like using pencil, because pencil will smudge, and you've got to use one of these little erasing shields that you just bounce on the paper, and it puts the little eraser things that'll keep you from smudging on your paper. But you can go to what we call Mylar. Now, I will get a sample of Mylar for you here in a second, but it is a high quality drafting film. It's heavier than vellum. It's long lasting. It's expensive. It's usually used for ink drawings, and let me get you a sample. But it's almost like a clear plastic. But hopefully you can see here, it's more of a plastic film. It's hard to tear. It makes a lot of noise when you're running around. The best thing about it is that you can erase any mistakes that you make on the Mylar. Not necessarily used it with a pencil eraser, but there is like a harder blue eraser that'll take and erase a fat Sharpie off of the Mylar. Little humor here: when I was in undergraduate school, my professor got his master's degree in landscape architecture from Harvard. Learned a lot from actually two of my professors. They both went to LSU, and then they both went to Harvard School of Design for landscape architecture. Learned a lot from those two professors, and they told me while they were both at Harvard, they bought one sheet of Mylar to last them through their 2-year master's program. And they would draw on the Mylar with pencil, and then they would erase it with an eraser every night. They said they were so poor that they could only afford one sheet of Mylar to get them through their master's program. They could get the erasers, next or little or nothing, but the Mylar was so expensive back in those days that they used one sheet. So they would draw like their base plan, run blueprints. This is back even when I was in school. We actually had a blueprint machine in the classrooms, and it would smell of ammonia and everything like that. But they would run a print, then they would erase their Mylar, then they would draw their next drawing, part of their project, run prints, erase the Mylar, and did that their entire 2-year stay at Harvard. But Mylar's good. It's a little more expensive, probably for a 24 by 36 sheet. You're looking at probably $5 now. It was a lot more back in their days, but it's $5 a sheet now, maybe a little bit more, just depending on where you get it at. I've yet to see it in one of the office supply stores. You probably need to get it at one of the reprographic stores. But pretty much, I tell everybody right now, and tell my students that Vellum's the way to go. That's pretty much what people are using, or they're even using like a bond paper. Grid paper, it can be used to draw to scale. Don't have a sample of that, but you can pick this up at any office supply store. Usually it's going to be like on an 8.5 by 11 sheet pad. They may have some bigger stuff with it, but this is good for laying out schematics for irrigation, or doing a simple layout of the backyard. It's real easy to use because it does have the grids, and it allows you to draw it to scale with those grids. You don't necessarily have to use a scale if you have grid paper. Bond paper, again, this is standard weight paper. It's pretty much copy paper, and it's used for copying designs rather than drawing on. I have seen people draw on it, but I would much rather use the Vellum. You take your Vellum sheets or your Mylar, you go to a reprographic store, and they're going to run prints for it, or actually photocopies. Now, if you go somewhere like one of the overnight, all-night open copy centers, they may not be able to run prints or photocopies of the Mylar. It would need to be on Vellum. That's what we did a lot when we were in studio. We would, and if we ran out of blueprint or ammonia or things like that, we were very close to one of the all-night photocopy stores, and we could take our drawings that we did on Vellum, and they had a 24 by 36 inch scanner that we could scan the drawings in, and it would make an actual photocopy for us. And we did that several nights where we were having to stay up all night and finish projects. I miss the days of blueprints. I miss the smell of the ammonia in the classroom, and actually running the blueprint sheets. Would have to keep the paper in a dark cabinet inside of a closet, and usually with the blueprint paper would be on a roll, or if we were lucky enough and had some extra money, we could buy the pre-cut sheets, and we'd lay our drawings over top of it. When the paper was yellow, we'd put our drawing on top of it, we'd run it through the blueprint machine, and it would just smell so good in the room. And that paper was just so thick and perfect. And when we took it back to the drafting table to render it and take our magic markers to it, it just looked a lot better than the actual photocopies of nowadays. So I'm a little bit old school. Like I said, I love sitting down at a design table and drawing by hand. Even though I'm good at CAD, I'm good at Pro Landscape, I still like sitting down and doing some hand drawings. Carrying tube. Looking to see if mine's around here. Problem with my stuff is students take it back and forth, and they're welcome to use my stuff that I've collected over the years. But a simple carrying tube. It's weatherproof. It's going to prevent rain, sunlight from hitting drawings. You don't want sunlight to hit it because it'll fade them out, and it organizes your drawings. Because if you had those several drawings, trying to roll them up and have them on a rubber band, the rubber band breaks. It can become a big mess. Now, very inexpensive, but what I've seen students do, I've seen them take things like Christmas paper tubes, or simple mailing tubes, and they'd kind of make their own. I've seen students take PVC pipe and get the caps. We're irrigation contractors, guys, so we're going to have some 2-inch pipe, maybe even 3-inch pipe in the shop somewhere, and we get the caps that we can put on the ends of them. Put one in, actually glue it with our irrigation glue, keep it on there, and then get like a sewer cap top on one end that we can screw in and keep our drawings on it. It's very, very good to keep them organized. Prints, they used to be called blueprints, what I just talked about, taking the yellow paper either on a roll or sheets already pre-cut, and we would lay our drawings either that was on Vellum or Mylar. You would lay the yellow paper face up, put your prints on top of it, and feed it through the blueprint machine, and it would print it. It would burn it to that copy, to that yellow paper, and the yellow paper would either turn, depending on if you had blue line paper or black line paper. Blue line paper reminded me of the old blueprints that we used to have, but then we also got the black line prints that we would use pretty much for our rendered drawings of the master plan and of the sections and perspectives that we drew. But reprographers have replaced the blueprinters that were called the zero graphics. So you'll see a store that'll say reprographics on the store. They may have their Mr. Smith's reprographics or Triad reprographics or whatever. You're going to see it, and they're probably going to sell survey equipment. They're going to sell drafting tables. They'll sell some minor drafting tools and of that thing. But usually you'll see one located near downtowns where they probably have some either architects or interior design firms, things of that nature. Blueprinting companies can print on Mylar or the Vellum. So what you can do is, if you've got an original master plan and you needed to make another reproducible print, they can actually take your drawing, or you could print it out like from a CAD program, and you wanted to make it to a reproducible, they can actually print your drawings to Mylar or Vellum that could be reproduced. Bond copies can be made at a copy store, especially one of the late night overnight places that are open 24 hours. I used to frequently have to visit them all the time. And then before getting expensive copies made, always do a test print. Even the overnighter stores, you go in and you photocopy, because it's based on linear foot that goes into the scanner. So if you feed it in the 24-inch side, it's going to charge you for 3 feet, versus if you just turn the paper and fed it in the wide side, they're charging you 2 feet, because it will accept a 36-inch wide paper going through. And a lot of times, customer service there at the overnight stores aren't that helpful, and they're going to feed it through the other way just to charge you that extra buck. So be careful. I have spent $3 or $4 making a photocopy of a drawing, but that's sometimes better than having to redraw everything. Tape dots. It holds down the corners of your paper when drawing. So when you have that nice drafting surface, you want to take a T-square, which I'll show you here in a minute, and you want to square that paper up, and then you want to tape it down with a corner. And these tape dots, you could also buy drafting tape on a roll of like Scotch tape, but it looks like regular masking tape, but it's not as sticky on the bottom, so it's not going to tear the corners of your drawing off when you need to take up your drawing. We keep several boxes of this here in the studio, and just tape down the drawings, and a lot of them are reusable. You'll see my students on their desk, they'll have the tape dots where they peel back and then they just leave there, and they can use it next time. Good thing about this, if you ever get big, which I haven't got big yet, but you can get your name printed on the tape dots. Now that means you're a big time designer when you've got your logo actually on the tape dots. I remember when I went to my first ASLA convention, and they were passing those out as we walked in, boxes of tape dots, and it said ASLA on it. Thought that was the coolest thing. Tsquare, okay, it's used to make horizontal and vertical lines. Let me get you mine. This is my Tsquare, my favorite. I will never throw it away. One of my professors gave this to me before she moved to Australia. She is now a professor and a doctorate of landscape architecture at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. Still talk to her every now and then on Facebook, but one of my good friends and one of the best influences in my life when it came to landscape architecture. But she gave me this before she moved. She'd broken down several things and give it to our graduating class of 5 people. So I will always use that Tsquare. But it helps you orient the paper to your drawing surface. So when you square it up, that's why it's called a Tsquare, because you square things up. You take those tape dots and tape down your paper, and you orient the paper to your table. Lines will be parallel to the paper if the paper is squared properly. And the best thing about it is when you take your triangles and you lay this flat on your table, the triangle is going to go up against it and it'll move back and forth. You can draw perpendicular lines to your Tsquare, and this will draw your horizontal and this will draw your vertical. So that is our Tsquare. We have our triangles. You need a 45 degree triangle. You need a 30-60. I've got several of these. They break easily, but I've had these since I was in school. Bought these after school, but I love these green ones. It's funny, some of this stuff is 20 years old and I'm still using it. Degrees, well, let's talk about lead. Degrees of softness and hardness. Now, again, I go over this with my students in the beginning design classes. There's a slew of pencils, that you can get. I tell them to buy 3 sizes, 0.03, 0.05, 0.07, 0.09. You're probably going to use 0.05, 0.07 the most. But I'd have the 4 pencils that they use, and then they change out leads. Or sometimes I told them to buy, several sets, and then keep each set with the different leads in it, because it's going to draw different weights and thickness and darkness and lightness based on the type of design that you're using. So mixed emotions for me on this. I could honestly, I could take a 0.05 HB pencil, and based on how hard I draw and how hard I press down, I can change up my textures and my line weight and everything, because then I'm going to run a copy and then I'm going to trace over it with Sharpies and color it and everything else. But if I'm just doing a basic irrigation design, probably get by with the 1 pencil anyway. But for purposes other than that, we're going to talk about the leads. When we have H lead, it's hard. The number and the H is the higher the number, the harder the lead. It produces a thin, light line. It does not smudge as much because it's hard. It's not going to smudge. The softer the lead, the more it can. I've seen the base of my finger and the base of my palm just black from lead. Same thing with my students. And when you run across your paper, that is going to create a smudginess. Before H, we use as our guidelines. And I've also taught my students, which I don't have one here, but there is a non-photo pencil. So if you need some guidelines, the 4H shouldn't be picked up if you draw it light enough when you run it through a photocopy. But there is such a thing called as a non-photocopy pencil that I use to draw my guidelines, and then I can trace over it with my Sharpie or Pentel pen. 2H is going to be used for drawing details. If we go to B lead, it's a softer lead with thicker dark lines. The higher the number, the softer the lead. So, 4B is going to be softer than the 2B lead. It has heavyweight lines. It will smudge. That's the one that creates that nastiness on the bottom of your palm here. It's sometimes used for, HB is sometimes used for shadows and contrast. I never draw my shadows on the original landscape design. I do that with a purple magic marker. But it's sometimes used for general drawings, so perfect for irrigation sketches or an as-built irrigation plan. A little better yet, for an after as-built irrigation plan, it's probably good to use colored pencils. But then 2B is sometimes used but smudges even more. So our commonly used leads are 4H, 2H, H, HB, and sometimes 2B. Lead, again, the types, they're graphite, which is more like your pencil, and then plastic, which you can use on the Mylar. And that is a good set of pencils there. As you can see, hopefully you can see my mouse moving over the screen. But if you, based on which lead you put in there, you turn that little guy and it will help you remember which lead size that you got on there. And this looks like 0.03, 0.05, 0.07, 0.09, and that actually looks like an actual lead holder, which is your thicker leads, and I've probably gotten rid of most of mine. But that's a good looking set of pencils that you can buy at any of the office supply stores there. There's a nice set. These are like your lead holders. No, actually, no. Because you got 0.03, 0.5, 0.7, 0.9, and I didn't mean to say 0.03 in the previous slide, but 0.3, 0.5, 0.7, 0.9. Here's your different leads. Looks like we got HB 0.5, HB 0.7, HB 0.9, and that would be HB 0.03. And these little tubes like this, you can get the difference. This is HB, so you can get the B, you can get the H leads in the same size. And what I told students is if they can afford to buy 3 or 4 sets of these pencils and then get the leads just like that, and then most of them will have that little turn thing that you can keep labeled. Or what we use and what I recommend is getting like a tackle box. I've got a little art bin thing. I just call it art bin. I bought this back in school. This thing's 20 years old, but it's like a tackle box. And what you can do is keep your different leads and pencils. You could actually label it. I know where everything is in here, but you could keep everything neat and organized and labeled, and not have to worry about changing out the leads, because that takes a lot of time if you only had like one set and you are changing it. But like I said, that's how I started off. I'm more of a pen guy right now. I like pen on Mylar, it's my favorite, but I'm doing pretty much everything on Vellum right now, just because you go to a reprographic store, people kind of look at you funny like you're still drawing on Mylar. I like it. If I had an old blueprint machine, I would still love to do that. Well, let's go back. Yeah, lead holder is pretty much the larger one. The leads are a lot longer. This is a lead holder. As you can see, it drops the lead. The lead's a lot thicker. You have to sharpen it with a lead sharpening thing. Just turns around and sharpens it. It's pretty neat. Still like using them, but the mechanical sets are a little bit cheaper and a lot easier to work with. My dad found some of my grandfather's old lead holders. He was a machinist and did a lot of drawing of machine parts and stuff, so that was kind of cool. So it kind of runs in my blood. Then you got the old traditional mechanical pencil, and those are just your inexpensive ones that you can get, like even grocery stores, and pretty much anything that sells school supplies and stuff, you can get that and actually use your the leads. But this is a good set of drawing pencils here. Usually they're going to say Stadler or Forte or something on it. They're going to be a brand that's really associated with architecture or engineering type drawings. Erasers, I got the good old Stadler. I get these for my kids every year at school, because I got tired of seeing them, after a week of having a brand new pack of pencils, that half of them, the eraser's gone. So I tell them not to use the actual eraser on the pencil, and they keep this out, and they will go through 2 or 3 of these in a school year. And the erasing shield, guys, this will allow you to lay this on a drawing and actually erase inside of it. What it does is keeps you from erasing everything. So like if lines cross like that on a drawing and you need to get rid of the edges and square it up, take that erasing shield and lay over it and clean it up real nice. The plastic white erasers can be washed as leads build up on them. So basically, yeah, you can just wipe that down good with a wet paper towel. Stick eraser, 1/4 inch in diameter. Use these, keep in your pocket and stuff. But if you're using pencil, that's good. These are even good for ink, especially if you have the blue Stadler. And you'll have one that'll be white on one side and blue on the other side. One's for ink on Mylar, the other one's for pencil on Vellum. So you can use those hand in hand. Templates, I'm not going to dig mine out, but as you can see, for irrigation, this is how we can draw our radius of the heads, and if we're doing landscape designs, this would be the actual diameter of the plant canopy or tree canopy. So use these a lot, go through them quite a bit. Again, I've got sets that I can't even tell what size they are, the numbers, because they've rubbed off. I mean, I've got stuff 20 years old, well, 19 years old. No, 20. I graduated undergraduate in 97, so it's 2015 right now. So 18 years old. It took me 3 years to get my bachelor's degree. So I bought the stuff freshman year. So yeah, definitely over 20 years old. They're all circles. You can get them for squares. You can get them with triangles and all kinds of things. Measure diameters to draw various sizes of circles. They're quick and they're to scale. A compass. These are good for drawing larger circles. Because the templates can only circle templates can only get so big. You adjust the distance between the point and the lead to the circle. So the radius. So you find the radius of your plant or of your irrigation head. If we're putting rotors 30 feet apart, 30 feet from each other, we'd take our radius of 15 and draw a complete circle around it, and that would give us the diameter of 30 feet. A good little tool to have. Scales. Again, we talked about it at the beginning of the lecture. You have an architect and you have an engineer scale. Both in my construction classes I teach and the design classes, at the beginning of each semester, again, we go over the scales on how to use them. They're rulers that represent feet. It's your architect. It's units of an inch. So example, 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. So 1/4 inch on paper is equivalent to 1 foot on site. That's the way I teach it. 1/8 scale is a common scale. So in our classes, well, there's four major scales that we use in my classes. If we're using the architect scale, we're going to be using either 1/4 scale or we're going to be using 1/8 scale. There's going to be larger drawings. If we're using engineer scale, which is increments of an inch or how many tick marks in an inch, we're probably either going to be using 10 scale or 20 scale. And with an architect scale, with an engineer scale, basically each little tick represents 1 foot. 1 tick represents 1 foot. Versus an architect scale, like here we have a quarter scale, it's going to read right to left from your perspective, a 1/4 inch on the scale or paper represents 1 foot on the project or the site. So we have a lot of exercises that we go over, making sure that students can read the scales and actually read tape measures. You won't believe how people easily forget that or don't even know where to start if it's their very first class of reading a ruler or a tape measure. Other tools, Ames lettering guide. I don't even keep one in my box. Some of my students love it. Some of them are like me. They can draw the guidelines with that blue non-photo pencil, or they would take like the 4H pencil and do their 1/4 inch lines to do architectural lettering. I love architectural lettering. I don't care what people say. I think that looks so good on a plan to use architectural lettering. And the good thing about it, if people learn to do it correctly, I could have a classroom of 20 students, and if they all are working on the same project and they copy and learn from me how to do the correct architectural lettering, it'll look like I did the lettering on all plans. And that's the way it was set up to be years ago. It should look like it come from the same person using that same type of architectural lettering. Now, what I also teach my students is that in Microsoft Word there are some good fonts that we can print out or print to a sticky back that we can peel and actually peel it and stick it down on our plans. Word used to have like architectural font. They called it technical or techno, and it's kind of disappeared, but I know you can buy it like in some of the Adobe software is actually buy that font, download it to your computer, and use the architectural fonts for your plans. I recommend doing it. It looks amazing, but you may not get excited about lettering as I do. But I don't use the Ames lettering guide. Some of my students do, and some of them don't. It's used with a Tsquare to create the guidelines, the top and bottom guidelines, and sometimes a midline. Dry cleaning bag. This will prevent the smudging. You can see the dust falling out of it, but what that does is get on your paper and it prevents that smudging when you rub your hands across the drawing. Dust the paper before the drawing to reduce the smudging, and you'll need like a brush to remove that debris. You take your dry erase bag, throw it down, get that crumbs on it, and if you need to do it, you just brush it away. So simple tool. Other tools, a protractor here, just a basic one that you can get at a, I use one like my kids do at school to actually help me draw property lines and things of that nature, 90 degrees north by west, things like that. I use a protractor to find that. Flexible curve, and I have one here to help draw nice curved shrub beds and things. We have different sizes of French curves, and got a little small one, got a larger one that can help us draw nice curvy linear design beds, landscape beds. And wow, that is to the end. And as you can see here, looks like there is some this looks like pencil and pen on a rolled up sheet of vellum. So if you do have any questions about this, you can send me an email, jonesericw@gmail.com, and there will be 10 questions on Moodle about this lecture to get your 1 hour of credit of CEUs. Thanks, and I hope to see you guys in the next lecture. Thanks.